Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. Let's get into it. So I made this analogy on my Patreon several times when it comes to the administration's current position on confronting the bullies on the playground for the first time, at least in 4 years, since the last time he was the 45th president of the United States. And so in this analogy, imagine for the first time, not the person who's physically getting bullied, but the person who's fighting for the right, who comes out on the playground and is taking up for the victims, the American people who have been bullied forever. So he goes out and he confronts these bullies for the first time. They're going to contest every single thing that Trump does because he's confronting these bullies face to face, and he's not scared at all. He has no fear. And why would the agitators take up for the bullies? Well, the bullies have protected the agitators for so long. With kickbacks, they're getting a return on their investment. Why would they want to lose that? So when Trump deploys his Doge element, for example, and they are exposing the agitators and the bullies' true colors with fraud, waste, and obviously abuse of the system, that's all transparent, by the way, on Doge.gov. Well, that's hurting their pocketbooks. So they fight against it. They come up with a brand that the Doge team and the administration are a bunch of fill in the blank. You guys have seen it. Also, the bullies on the playground happen to be all the countries who, for some reason, don't understand the balance of economics when it comes to trade. And so if they have their multiple and they've been used to getting that multiple, when Trump comes out and confronts the bullies and say, no, we just want to get back to a common sense baseline and start this whole thing over, because it's not acceptable that, for example, South Korea, which I happen to be a little bit of South Korean, happens to be protected to be able to thrive in their economy, one of the most powerful economies in the world, and they're throwing multiples on incoming goods coming into America from South Korea. How is that fair, especially when we've invested a lot of blood, a lot of treasure, and the protection of the South Koreans from the North Korean empire? And here again, we're getting the bad end of the deal. The most significant component to this analogy that I'm using is, for the first time, we're going to confront these bullies head on, like Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. This regional conflict that is being supported by Iran is very dangerous. And so we expect there might be a fight, because their standard operating procedure in the past is working with this passive aggressive administration that talks a lot, but they won't back their words with action. You run into this dilemma. The dilemma is we're standing up for the right, and that's going to be more confrontational. And likely there are going to be schoolyard fights that we need to get used to. So let me roll this tape for you guys.
You know, of course, that the Iranian regime has always been hostile to the United States and our allies and partners, and they are one of the leading state sponsors of terror, as we know. It supports Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist networks. Iran's own Islamic Revolutionary Guards is a designated foreign terrorist organization, and many regime leaders have also been designated as terrorists. I can tell you that in negotiating, at which I've already answered to some degree, is that the president's made it clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And what we want from them, as Secretary Rubio has said, under Donald Trump, there is not going to be a nuclear Iran. Iran must stop its nuclear escalations, its ballistic missile program, its networks and campaign of regional aggressive activities, its repression of the Iranian people's freedom, and the IRGC's destabilizing activities. I also think I can say this to you, that President Trump has been consistent and clear. The United States is determined to make sure that Iran will not acquire a nuclear weapon. He has expressed his willingness to pursue a deal with Iran. If the Iranian regime does not want a deal, as I said earlier, the president has other options, and those alternatives will be very bad for Iran.
An administration, as represented by the State Department in this case, who has unequivocally written in stone that Iran is not going to get nuclear weapons. It's not going to happen. I happen to believe, as somebody who's worked for the government for many years, that we likely have a clandestine campaign running in the background of this. So covertly, we're setting the stage. Because if Iran gets nuclear weapons, we will be dropping bombs. We will be dropping bombs on Iran to make sure they never have not only the nuclear capability that can affect especially the West, but also getting rid of their ICBM, their intercontinental ballistic missile capability. If they have the ability to launch not even a nuclear weapon, just a ballistic weapon, they're going to be able to affect our military bases and installations. And we so easily forget about our past under the Biden administration when they were attacking and killing Americans at bases. What did we do? We retaliated by hitting empty shipping containers in the middle of the desert. Trump is not going to let that happen. I anticipate there will be a broader conflict specifically targeting Iran, who by proxy and by benefit is facilitating this entire regional war with Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the list goes on. So what is Iran's position? Let's go ahead and roll this tape.
در منطقه حداقل در اطراف ایران 10 پایگاه دارن 50,000 نفر نیرو هم دارن یعنی در یک اتاقک شیشه‌ای نشستن کسی که تو اتاقک شیشه‌ای هست سمت کسی سنگ پرانی نمی‌کنه.
All right, guys, this episode, like many other episodes, is not sponsored. You guys can look at the links down below, including the links to my book, Prepared, A Manual for Surviving Worst Case Scenarios. The Audible version of this is a lot better, but you can support the channel by picking up my book. Also, my patreon.com/Mike Glover is linked down below for the underground version of this. So this analogy that this guy uses is that you don't throw stones in a glass house. Now, this is a good analogy because in this analogy, he's talking about the military installations that are close to Iran. What Iran's military doesn't realize in their own analogy is if they're able to affect the glass houses with a stone's throw away, they're in the middle of this in a glass house. So if they want to throw stones, their entire house is made of glass and will completely be destroyed. Our house is made of lead and separated by oceans, which is why border security is so significant. And again, this Greenland issue is so important. Let's look at the escalation in Yemen.
الأمريكي كافة التداعيات جراء عسكرة البحر الأحمر وتوسيع دائرة المواجهة باستمراره في شن العدوان على اليمن وبما يؤثر سلبا على حركة الملاحة الدولية اليمنية. تمكنت القوات المسلحة اليمنية خلال الساعات الماضية من استهداف حاملة الطائرات الأمريكية USS هاري ترومان شمالي البحر الأحمر وذلك بصاروخين مجنحين وطائرتين مسيرتين واستهداف مدمرة أمريكية بصاروخ مجنح وأربع طائرات مسيرة.
So as you can see there, the Comic-Con version of their leadership is comical at best. I mean, they're throwing stones in the Gulf of Aden at ships that are dropping bombs on their entire infrastructure. I spent about a year on and off in Yemen. It's one of the most disastrous countries in the world. One of the most highly oppressive countries in the world. We used to joke in OGA that the cot bag, which is this red plastic bag, was the official bird of the country of Yemen because you would see those bags flying all over the country because everybody was on cot, this Adderall type drug. Everybody was hopped on it. And when you have no purpose and you declare war against the United States, which you know nothing about, sure, picking up your AK and throwing stones, literally in some cases, at these ships in the ocean brings you profound purpose. I mean, what other purpose do you have? You have no economy. You can't get a job except working for a terrorist organization. And there's no women at all. All the women are tucked away in burqas. They can't even come out in public. It's an insane, bizarro world type of country. And they think they're doing the right thing by declaring war on the U.S. Well, the issue, just like in my schoolyard analogy, they're being played and bullied by Iran, being fed to these proxy elements who are giving them an instilled purpose and cash. They're giving them money so they can buy cell phones and TVs and have some semblance of a normal life in that country. So how is this going to play out for the Houthis? Just like history has told us over the last couple of decades for the Houthis, it's not going to play out well. They're just going to get decimated by the strength and might of the U.S. military, and eventually the head of the snake is going to get cut off. Now, how are we going to be affected as a nation? Well, if you think about what's going on in all elements of security, it's a lot of issues. Because when you start fighting one bully, several bullies are going to step up and they're going to take advantage because they know we're distracted. Where you have Tren de Aragua, MS-13, many cartels, designated foreign terrorist organizations. At the same time, we have a domestic national security campaign to protect the homeland. We are going to create more conflict with these gangs and these cartels that are going to wage war on us. And it's going to be multiple fold. It's not just going to be a direct campaign of fighting in the streets. It's going to be drugs that are tainted with more fentanyl, killing more Americans. It's going to be border wars. The list goes on. Another element to this that we'll talk about in the underground is the domestic threat. Now you see purpose being driven to the streets to conduct acts of violence against Tesla owners, factories, and dealerships across the globe. So you have a radical domestic campaign going on that's being supported by the Democratic Party, because when they're not coming out against it and multiple representatives are coming out seemingly supporting it, that's a huge problem. But Pam Bondi isn't going to have it. Let's roll this clip.
If you take part in the wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla properties, we will find you, arrest you, and put you behind bars. Today, I'm proud to announce that the Department of Justice has unsealed federal charges against another Tesla attacker. We've charged Cooper Frederick in the firebombing of a Tesla dealership that occurred on March 7th in Loveland, Colorado. All of these cases are a serious threat to public safety. Therefore, there will be no negotiating. We are seeking 20 years in prison. The crime was committed in Colorado, and thanks to the great investigative work by the FBI, the defendant was arrested in Plano, Texas. Let this be a warning. You can run, but you cannot hide. Justice is coming.
All right, so you take that where, again, zero tolerance for domestic threats by Americans and illegals who are waging war in the streets, whether it's physical violence or damage to property, that's domestic terrorism. Good luck with that, because you're going to spend decades in prison. At the same time, we have this regional conflict that's going on throughout the U.S. I always talk about it. I try to make this connection. Like, there's many components of this that are going to affect national security, but not just that, our own security as individuals, family units, and communities. That's why we always got to be prepared. It's what I talk about on my patreon.com/Mike Glover. That's what I do constantly, is talk about how to be individually prepared. You need to think about those things, and I hope to give you the tools. This week, we're talking about situation awareness and some neurological response in fight or flight. Again, you can check it out in the link down below. Lastly, what's the prospect for the future? It's not going to get easier, folks. It's going to get more dangerous. Economically, there's going to be instability. National security, both domestic and abroad, is going to be more fragile. Look, there's going to be many players that are going to be looking to take advantage. We just need to be prepared and informed overall, which is why I do this show, which I hope you're getting value from. Lastly, wrapping up, they did find that force soldier deceased out of Lithuania, stationed at the 3rd Infantry Division out of Fort Stewart. Prayers out to the friends and family of those victims. Guys, I'm headed off to the underground. I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.